Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Tuesday morning, November the 8th. We've been talking for a couple of weeks now about the possibility of kind of a wild end to the Atlantic Basin tropical season. At the same time, we transition over to a colder and colder weather pattern in the central and eastern part of the nation. And indeed, it looks like they'll become kind of intertwined with tropical moisture riding up along the eastern seaboard early this weekend, Friday night, early Saturday time frame for that. That's tropical storm Nicole moisture that will ride up along the eastern seaboard. Looks like Nicole will make landfall probably somewhere around early Thursday between Miami and Cape Canaveral on the eastern side of Florida, perhaps as a Category 1 storm system. At the same time, much colder air will be pouring into the northern plains. It looks like they'll have a widespread accumulation event with that particular cold air intrusion, and some of that cold air finally makes its way into the eastern states in the wake of the storm system. We're talking Saturday night and Sunday for the arrival of a big time temperature change for the eastern part of the nation. It turns much colder this weekend. It looks like it'll stay on the cold side going through the rest of November. Let's take a look at the current map as depicted here by NOAA's National Hurricane Center. Nicole, still a tropical storm, sustained winds around 50 miles per hour right now. It will continue in a general westward motion over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. Probably make landfall somewhere in this region, let's say between Miami and Cape Canaveral on the eastern side of Florida late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. And at the same time, colder and colder air will be pouring into the northern plains, and there is a very strong upper level trough correlated or associated with that cold air intrusion into the northern plains. This system, the tropical system, will become increasingly influenced by that trough that will be traversing across the nation from west to east later on in the week, and the result will be a sharp turn to the north and northeast and a ride right up along the Atlantic seaboard Friday night, Saturday time frame. So again, Nicole moves generally westward over the next 24 to 48 hours or so, likely making landfall in eastern Florida early Thursday, and then shortly thereafter it will take a sharp turn to the north and northeast and ride up right along the coastline, and that will pave the way for a significant rain event all the way from Florida to Maine at the latter part of the week going into the early part of the weekend. Well, in terms of potential rainfall associated with this tropical system riding up along the East Coast, here's the latest forecast map by NOAA for the next 7 days. It runs from this morning, Tuesday morning, all the way into next Tuesday morning, a 7-day period of total precipitation amounts. And look at some of these values here. This particular band here of red represents 3+ inches of rain, really all the way from DC to Philadelphia, New York City, all the way up to Boston. Of course, Florida gets a tremendous rain event out of this with maybe some hurricane force winds as well. Again, Nicole can certainly strengthen to a Category 1 hurricane status just before it makes landfall in eastern Florida later on in the week, but a tremendous rain event coming all the way from Florida to Maine associated with Tropical Storm Nicole. Meanwhile, a lot of this you see here on the weather map here for the next 7 days will be in the form of snow. Expect some significant snowfall accumulation amounts across parts of the northern plains and the upper part of the Midwest, maybe places like Minnesota and upper Wisconsin as well. The Sierra Nevada mountain range in eastern California will get pummeled by some significant snow amounts over the next couple of days, as much as 3, 4, 5 feet of snow in some of those higher elevations of eastern California. Notice also the rest of California, the low-lying areas, get a significant rain event here over the next few days as well. So that certainly will diminish the chance of a significant wildfire season, at least in the near term. Again, heavy snow in the higher elevations of the Sierra Nevada over the next couple of days, and expect a widespread accumulating snow event across the northern plains, upper part of the Midwest over the next few days as well. Tremendous rain right up and down the Atlantic seaboard. Well, before we take a look at the surface maps using, once again, the Canadian model run from 0Z, I think the Canadian model has had a pretty good handle on this overall situation, so I'm kind of sticking with it right now, although there's not too much discrepancy amongst the models in terms of what lies ahead for the end of the week and weekend. I wanted to focus here on a temperature pattern. We just talked about a lot of the precipitation expectations over the next several days, but some big time changes are coming, and we've talked about this extensively for a couple of weeks now. The late stages of the Atlantic Basin tropical season sometimes result in a big time temperature pattern change for the central and eastern part of the nation. Indeed, that will be the case here going into the weekend and into the early part of next week. We're starting off still warmer than normal conditions here in the eastern half of the nation, colder than normal, kind of bottled up across the western part, especially the southwestern part of Canada and California, and just off the Pacific Coast, a lot of colder than normal air. Here we are Tuesday morning, and let's move forward here and watch what happens. First of all, we continue to remain relatively warmer than normal in the eastern half of the nation, but certainly today will be a lot cooler than yesterday in the eastern U.S. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, noticeably cooler conditions this morning. Yesterday, very likely the warmest day we'll experience in the mid-Atlantic region until next spring. Cold frontal passes last night assured some noticeably cooler conditions today and tomorrow. And of course, the overall pattern changes to much colder this week, and it looks like that will be sustained going through the rest of November. Here we are now towards the end of the week. This Thursday night, now into Friday morning. This is a time where tropical moisture will begin to ride up along the eastern seaboard, and cold air is pouring into the central plains again. There could be a significant snow accumulation event in northern plains, upper part of the Midwest, with that cold air intrusion, and it just charges into the eastern states in the wake of the passage of Nicole. Once Nicole passes out, back out over the open waters of the Atlantic Ocean, that kind of sets off a pattern change that produces upper level winds that will allow for all that cold air that's been bottled up in the western part of the U.S. and Canada in recent days and weeks to flood into the central and eastern part of the nation. Here we are Saturday night and into the day on Sunday. Big time change to cold in the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S., and we'll move forward here and we'll see quite an extensive area of colder than normal conditions by the latter part of the week and the earlier part of next week. Colder than normal on this Canadian model at 850 millibar level, all the way basically from coast to coast. And let's continue to move forward here, and we'll see it sticks around. That colder than normal air kind of reinforcement by the early to middle part of next week. Even snow is not out of the question in parts of the eastern U.S. later next week. We'll, of course, focus in on that possibility over the next several days. But here we move forward here, and to the end of this particular model run. This goes out 10 days all the way to next Thursday night, November 18th. That's a week from this Thursday night. And look at this cold air, the extent of it throughout much of Canada and virtually coast to coast across the nation as we move through the beginning stages of the second half of the month of November. Again, this is a 10-day forecast map. Very impressive cold pattern setting up in the wake of Tropical Storm Nicole. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps, again using the 0Z run of the Canadian model last night. First of all, here is what is currently Tropical Storm Nicole, and look at this large Canadian high pressure system up across the Hudson Bay region of Canada. That again is supplying much cooler air today into the mid-Atlantic region. Yesterday, temperatures well up in the 70s. D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and again, that's very likely the warmest day that we'll experience until next spring. The colder pattern is getting underway right now. Let's move forward here and watch what happens. Nicole continues to move on a west to southwest track over the Bahamas as we get in the latter part of Wednesday, and probably makes landfall maybe near Cape Canaveral, anywhere along the east central part of Florida by late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. Notice here at the same time, cold air is invading the northern plains here, and some accumulating snow across the Dakotas and eventually Minnesota and Wisconsin as well. This has a very sharp upper level trough associated with it, with that cold air intrusion and a strong surface low, and the winds in the upper part of the atmosphere will begin to influence tropical storm Nicole. Again, it could be a hurricane at some point in its lifetime here, and this system that will move basically west to southwest over the next 24 to 48 hours will then take a sharp turn to the north and northeast as that upper level trough slides across the northern U.S. Let's move forward here, and here we go. We have the tropical system and all of its moisture field moving to the North Andes up along the Atlantic seaboard. Especially looks like heavy rain come Friday night in the mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S., and gusty winds as well. Whatever remains of Nicole at this time will be moving over the mid-Atlantic region into the northeast U.S. Again, a significant rain event on the way from Florida to Maine. Probably the focus time period for the big cities in the mid-Atlantic I-95 corridor region of D.C., Philadelphia, New York City will be Friday night. Again, heavy rain possible right at this timetable. Gusty winds as well. It kicks on out by early Saturday, and then in the wake of the storm, probably fairly mild still for part of Saturday, but by the time we get to Saturday night, and this is the Saturday evening forecast map, we are setting the stage here for that cold air to start pouring into the mid-Atlantic region. Again, it looks like the real change in the pattern will begin to be felt in the I-95 corridor region Saturday night going into the day on Sunday. Here we are on Sunday, and Sunday night, this time period right here into Monday morning, right here, this could very well be the first widespread hard freeze in much of the mid-Atlantic region, northeastern part of the nation. By that I mean temperatures could end up well below freezing by the time we get to early Monday morning in places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. A widespread hard freeze possible by late Sunday night, early Monday morning. Then we'll have to watch some moisture later next week from the Gulf of Mexico that could, in fact, push up to the northeast into some cold air. Possibility of snow for parts of the eastern U.S. later next week. We'll focus in on that over the next several days, but we have a lot to get to before we even have to deal with that. First of all, a significant rain event all along the eastern seaboard Friday night into early Saturday, and then a big-time temperature pattern change begins this weekend, probably Saturday night into Sunday for the mid-Atlantic, the northeast U.S. A change to cold. That cold will be sustained for the remainder of the month of November. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.